I'm Pastor Jake. I want to talk about planting. Jesus talked about trees, he talked about seeds, he talked about almost anything that was growing. You know, because in the day that was what was there. That's what most people related to. You talked about the planting and the sower is the one who went out and he sowed on good ground, and some went on the stony ground, some on the thorns. He talked about the seed dying. He said, unless the seed dies, a tree can't be born. He was talking about in his own life. He said he's the seed. Unless he died, he couldn't save and grow into a big tree, which is Christianity now. One thing I want to talk about is fields. You know, he talked about covering the fields with the flowers and all that. But here's the thing is, if you ever look in a field, let's say I grew up in a farmland, and I'd look at all the fields, and in the middle were always the biggest and the best plants. They were always healthier. Why? Because they were surrounded by other plants to give them, for the sunlight, it kept the roots from getting, too much sun and drying it out. It gave for the wind, gave more support, and some plants were healthy because they were around other plants like them. And that's how we should be in church. We should be around people that are more healthier for us. Because you look at the plants on the outside of the field, they're always smaller and weaker. Why? Because they take the grunt of the force of the wind and the heat and the rain. They take it all and it just beats them down. That's why we need to be those plants that are in the center. Another thing is being on good soil. This is one thing I've seen a lot in, is you got a person who is just for God 100%. And then they get into a church that doesn't feed them, doesn't give them nutrients. So it reminds me of down here, there's a lot of hurricanes and stuff like that. Well, you see trees that shouldn't have no problem. They're healthy, good trees, but the soil was weak. That's why we need to be into a church just like that. We need to be in good ground where our roots are planted solid. So in all this, it's funny how Jesus used plants to describe his world around him. We can use them too, is that we need to grow. We don't need to be a plant that stays this tall all of our life. We need to be that tree. Like he said, what was it? The mustard seed. It grew up so big. A little seed, which grew up so big. So keep growing in God. Keep getting good nutrients. Keep in the Word. Have a blessed week.